Hello, well at our September meeting we've decided to do some demonstrations of data communications modes on the HF band, particularly RTTY and to some extent PSK, which are either conversational or used in contests. Now we've got a RTTY contest, the CQ Worldwide RTTY contest, coming up this weekend. This is being recorded on Friday, so that's tomorrow and Sunday. And I'm going to just have a bit of a dabble in the RTTY contest. Nothing too serious, but it's just useful to keep practicing and getting some familiarity with using RTTY in contests. And it was suggested that I do a bit of a video to show the whole station in action during the RTTY contest. So I thought what I'd do is show you some of the setup that I've got here, and then we'll switch to tomorrow and show some QSOs in progress. So first off, just to let you know, this is the FTDX10 that I'll be using into my dipole antenna, which will cover virtually all the bands that I need to. Not terribly effectively, but it's enough to make some QSOs in a contest like CQ Worldwide. The computer that I've got is up here. It's a little mini ITX based computer with a number of devices plugged in on the USB, and I'll show you the setup for that in a moment. And the screen's over on the back here, which is actually quite a convenient setup. So first off, I'm going to show you the setup on the software side and also the hardware side. The FTDX10 is connected simply by a single USB connection to the computer. The USB carries the whole of CAT control, it carries the audio for RTTY going in and out. Effectively the DX10 mounts on the PC as an audio card, so the computer sees this as a USB based audio card, which is jolly handy. If you've got an older rig, then you have to work out some method of interfacing to the rig rather than using the USB. I've also got here, you can probably just about see it, my trusty old TS2000, which I used to use much more for HF and data communications. In order to do interfacing for the computer with the TS2000, I've got a signal link box up here. This is one which is set up to interface to the TS2000. Still works quite nicely. I fired it up the other day and found that it was still working quite nicely on FT8. But generally I'll now use the DX10. Okay, so I'm going to break here and go straight to what's on the screen so you can see the setup of the software. Now I realise that using a camera pointing at the screen is not the best way of showing what's on the screen from a video point of view, but it'll have to do. What I'm going to show you first is the setup that I've got, if you like, on the hardware side. So on this side here I've got my control panel sounds panel lit up, and on this side it's the device manager, and it's just useful to, when you're first setting this up, make a note of all of the various settings that you've got, so when you actually start to run the amateur radio software you've got a reasonable chance. So I'm going to zoom in first of all to the sound settings. So here's my sound settings on the computer. You see that I've actually got quite a lot of stuff plugged into the computer, and that's because I've still got the signal link connected up which goes to the TS2000, and I've got the DX10 which is effectively mounted as a sound card. Now the DX10 is this one here, 5 USB audio codec. I've set this as the default communications device. If you right mouse click here, you can set this as either the default device, which is not terribly useful because it means that when you get system sounds it gets sent to the rig, which you don't want to have, but it is set then as the default communications device. That's on playbacks for the speakers. On recording you do just the same. This is the line input here, and again I've set this as the default communications device. If I was going to use the signal link, then I'd have to select the appropriate one for the signal link. But this is now set up for the DX10. So I can OK that, and then we'll go on to the device manager. This is showing then the device manager. The important bit here is the ports. You see the ports here, and it lists all the ports of all the stuff that's connected. And if you're not sure which device is which, then just unplug them and plug them in, and you'll soon see them appear and you'll know which one is which. As far as the DX10 is concerned, then they appear here as the Silicon Labs dual CP 2105 USB to UART bridge. There's both an enhanced and a standard, and the normal CAT control for the FTDX10 is the enhanced one, and you can see that's COM port 3. COM port 5 is actually used for the PTT line, so that'll put the rig in to transmit when you want to transmit. So it's important to note down on a bit of paper probably that COM 3 is the enhanced, COM 5 is the standard, and then when it comes to configuring the software, you know which one is which. We'll now go on and start up the amateur radio software, so I'll close down the device manager, we don't need that anymore. Okay, so we're now set up looking directly at the screen, and we'll start up the amateur radio software. Now the program I'm going to be using for the RTTY contest is the N1MM program. It's a logging program, but it has a range of different functions and facilities, far more than you need from the vast majority of contests, but that just makes it a bit more useful. And it also has an adjunct bunch of software that loads up at the same time for RTTY contests, and the one we're using is FLDigi. So what you have on the screen when you start at N1MM, and I've just configured this already before we started for the RTTY contest so that everything starts up at the same time. On the left hand side is the normal logging part of the N1MM program. This is where you stick the call sign of the person you're going to be working here, report and all the rest of it in here. And there's a bunch of function keys here which we'll come back to later. And as you work stations, they appear down here in the log of all of the stations that you've been working. On the right hand side, this is the digital interface, the FLDigi interface. Now there's two variants of software that you can run with N1MM, with digital interfaces and digital contests. There's FLDigi and there's mmVary, and you select which one you want using this interface button here, mmVary or FLDigi. Now I've not used mmVary, some people like it, but I've only ever used the FLDigi program, and I've normally found that it works pretty well. So this part here, this of the screen, is where when you receive stuff it'll start typing it out, and this bit down the bottom here is the waterfall display. This will become far more apparent when we're actually in the contest tomorrow, because down here you'll see the RTTY signals appearing, and you use this mouse to zoom around, lock on to a signal that you actually want to decode. Once you're locked onto it, it'll start decoding and you'll get the text coming up here, and that will also be the frequency you'll transmit on at the same time, so you will go back code channel to the station that you're calling. The bottom right hand here, this is either an oscilloscope type display, or if you click on it, it turns into a Lissajous figure. Again, that'll become apparent when we're tuning into an RTTY signal. You'll see that tomorrow, and it'll resolve into like a cross format here when you're perfectly tuned into the RTTY signal. Now there's a whole bunch of configurations, as with all software, and the key bits are in the N1MM program itself. You click on the config tab up here and then configure ports, and this area here is where you set your COM3 for CAT control. So I've set COM3 as being my main CAT control one. I put the radio, the FTDX10 in, and to configure all that you click on the set button. This dialog comes up here, you make sure all of your data rates and all the rest of it are correct, and that's all been pre-done. The COM5 I mentioned earlier on was being used for PTT, so again when you click on here you can see that the RTS is being used for PTT. The DTR has to be always on, and I've found this by a matter of deduction rather than finding it in the manuals. So once you've got all those configured, then you know that your CAT control and your PTT is going to be working correctly. Also in the digital modes here, in the digital interface TU type, it's got sound card. This tells the N1MM program that you're going to be using a sound card to send sounds in and out. And this bit down here, the FLDigi setup, if used, which we are using, this is the path of where the FLDigi program has been loaded. Normally this all gets loaded at the same time as you're loading up the N1MM program, so this should all be pre-configured. If it isn't, then you've actually got to go and find where you've loaded FLDigi, make sure the path number is correct there, and it'll then start up when you start the N1MM program with the RTTY mode. Cancel that. The other bit of configuration, and you'll find that every time you do even if you've done nothing on the configurations, it always restarts FLDigi. Never worked out why. The other bit that you need to do down here under configuration on the waterfall display, you go into config dialog here, then under sound card, this is where you stick in, let's click on that again, devices. This is where you stick in the identity of the sound card you'll be using, the 5 USB audio codec that we saw earlier on in the sound control panel. And that again then tells FLDigi that this is where the data is going to come in from for audio and where to send it out when you're trying to transmit. Now the great thing about N1MM working with FLDigi in this in contest environment is that these buttons here are all pre-programmable to send a range of bits of information when you're in QSO. And you can configure any one of these differently. There's a whole range here of how they are pre-configured. I've done these for my own purposes, and it means that if I'm in QSO I can move from point to point to point and just click on these and I'll send the appropriate data to the other station. The other great thing about working N1MM with FLDigi, when you copy a call sign over on this side of the thing, you click on it, it comes up and enters itself into the screen on this side, so everything's now ready to be sent off to the other station. You'll see this again in earnest when we actually have the contest running tomorrow. Now I will just demonstrate some of the sending. If I turn up the sound on my TS2000 so you can hear when I'm transmitting. If I go down here and press the transmit button, you'll hear that's just an idle signal going out. I'll just tune in slightly. Let me just check yes, I'm into a dummy load. Actually I turned the power up earlier on. I'm going to turn the power down again, because we don't want to be transmitting lots of power even if it's into a dummy load. Now these buttons here I mentioned here, you see this one here, it says F8, it's got my call sign in it, so if I click on that it sends the call sign, and you can see it's written it up here as well, so it's echoing what it is you're transmitting. If I was going to call CQ I could do that here, CQ test and then my call sign. So you can see it's then straightforward for you to have a QSO with all of the information going out here without actually touching the keyboard at all. In fact, during an RTTY contest I almost never touch the keyboard. Just to say that I'm not going to call it cheating, but even in a CW contest you get a similar sort of interface and you can do exactly the same. You can work an entire CW contest and never touch the key. But I won't say that, because clearly you think that actually I'm operating the Morse key the entire time when I'm using a CW contest. Right, so I will stop there, and at this point we'll cut to tomorrow, when hopefully we'll have some QSOs going in the CQ Worldwide contest. So it's now Saturday morning and the contest is well underway. I didn't get up at 1 o'clock in the morning to start. It's now about 9:15 BST, 8:15 GMT. First thing to note on the 20 metre band, if you look along here, you can see a mass of signals here. These are all RTTY signals, if you ever listen into this. It's the familiar sound of frequency shift keying RTTY. So I've already made a few contacts on 20 meters, just European stations, Italian and a Bulgarian station and a Finnish station. I'll whiz across now to the display so you can see how things work on the N1mm display. So this is the N1mm log screen. On the left hand side you can see that these are the stations I've already worked here. Just 5 of them so far. No serial numbers in CQ Worldwide. The only exchange you have is a zone number, and if you work stations in the US or Canada, there's also a state or district number that you need to record. Actually N1mm fills in virtually all the information for you. You'll see this in a moment. On this screen here, then, this is the what's being received at the moment. Below that, this is the waterfall display. Now the waterfall display is jolly useful, as what you'll see here is that the main signal we're listening to is this one here. I'm going to click on that one and it'll then start decoding, and you'll find that what comes up on the screen above it when it starts transmitting, that station starts transmitting. So CQ test OH3 FM, OH3 FM. And you can see that OH3 FM is in grey. Now that's because I've already worked that station. If it's a station that I've not worked again, like SP2R who is calling OH3 FM, it comes up in blue. So any station that comes up in blue, that's a station that I can call and work. So I'm going to tune around now and find a station that I can work, and then we'll take you through that sequence. Okay, so I'm now listening to station 9A1A. It's just in QSO at the moment. And you can see it decoding 5915 and 5915 is the report coming from the SP station that's working him. SP50UU, thank you, 9A1A CQ. So I'm now going to call him, and this is me going out, 9A1A, G3ZNU, G3ZNU. Now we listen. It comes back, G3ZNU, 5915, 5915. I press the next button and I start automatically sending back to him, thank you, 5914, 5914, that's my exchange. And then he comes back and says, G3ZNU, thank you, I can now commit that. And so now you can see the exchange as it goes out, and as I tune around other stations here, I zoom in on them, make sure that they're nicely in the middle of the audio band. LZ7A, I'll call him because he's calling CQ. LZ7A, G3ZNU, G3ZNU. He's gone back to somebody or other else. We'll just wait here because zone 20 is a new zone. Oh no, it's not a new zone for me. So someone calling CQ, let's see if they... CQ test IW0WBX, I0WBX, so I'm just calling him. Again, just by clicking the F2 button on my keyboard. OK1HEH, so no, he's not working me. I'll just wait my time and maybe we'll come back next time. I'll just move that down so on the waterfall display so you can see what's going on here. Thank you, IW0WBX CQ, so I'm now calling him. Ah, DB2KT. He's obviously getting some pretty strong stations calling him, so I'm not actually getting through. I'll just give it one more try and then we'll move on. So we'll just call him again, I0WBX. G3ZNU, here we are, 59915. So I'll go on back to him. Thank you. Now I'm just going to move up to the N1NN screen. You see the entry there, that's when I've clicked on his call sign on the right hand side, it's automatically taken the call sign up into the N1NN entry screen here, entry point. So I didn't have to enter his call sign at all. When I tabbed across, it filled in the 15 here because it knows what zone Italy is in, so I didn't even have to enter that. And if I were working a US station with the state, I could just click on the right hand side and the state would get filled in as well. So you really don't have to touch much of the keyboard when you're operating. It's just moving from sequence to sequence. I'll just commit that to the log, and that's the end of that contact. So we're well into the contest now. It's 4:30 clock time, 3:30 GMT. I'm back on 20 meters. I've been doing a bit on 10 meters, working the US and South America a little bit. Quite a lot of Europeans on 20 meters and a few DX stations. I thought I'd just show you now what you do sort of when it gets into a mature part of the contest, where effectively you're scanning across the band in search and pounce looking for someone new to work, and you just go from RTTY signal to RTTY signal looking for someone new, and looking at the decoding here to see if it's a station you've worked. If they come up in blue, that's a call sign you've not worked. If it's red, then that's probably a more exciting one, like a multiplier or something like that. And if it's in this sort of grey colour, that means it's someone you've already worked. So there's no point in dwelling any further, you just step on to the next one. Your own call sign, you can see, comes up in a sort of brown colour. Not that you really need to identify your own call sign, because generally you know that. If we look at the DX10s, I'll just have to move this slightly, the DX10s band map here. I'll just zoom in on that slightly and focus that a bit. You can see how busy it is down here. I've got this set to 20 kilohertz span, so you get quite a few signals. All this lot here is FT8, and then as I go down here, all this lot is RTTY signals. If you look at the waterfall here, it's a characteristic 2 lines showing the FSK of RTTY. So you can very quickly identify which is an RTTY signal. Generally, if they're quite a reasonable size here, I can work them. If they're a bit on the weak side, they probably won't hear me. If they're strong, I've probably already worked them in scanning around the bands up to now. With the CQ Worldwide contest, you get multipliers for the number of countries you work on each band, so you can work the same country multiple times, work the same station multiple times on different bands, and you get a multiplier. You also get multipliers for the states in the US and the districts in Canada. So there's quite a lot to be looked for. I'm not such a big signal that I can sit on a frequency and call CQ, although I might have a go at that maybe tomorrow when everyone else is getting bored and they've already worked everyone, so I might be able to pick up a few like that. But you can see there that oh yes, I should say, when I started doing RTTY, I used to use like a 3 kilohertz audio bandwidth, and then on the waterfall over here, where are we, on this waterfall, then I'd go and pick out which signal I wanted to work using the mouse. What I've done today, particularly with the DX10, which has got some good filters on it, I've actually screwed the whole thing down to a 500 hertz filter. So generally I only get a single RTTY signal in the pass band, which is this slightly bluish area. You can just about maybe see the bluish area there. Yeah, it seems to show up on the screen okay. So that's my pass band. With the centre at about 800 hertz, that's a reasonable sort of listening frequency. And then if I just need to trim the frequency, I can do that with the mouse and lock into the middle of the frequency at about 800 hertz. So generally then I only get a single signal in the passband. This means that if I've got a strong signal nearby, I don't get the AGC knocked out, which is much better in terms of readability. So what I'll do now is I'll just zoom back out a little bit and see if we are able to find any new stations, and you'll see them coming up on the display there, and if we do manage to work any, then we'll see how we go. So I'll just do a little I'm just tuning around now. So SQ6ELK, SQ6ELK, they're working someone. We'll see who that is. It's probably someone that I've worked because they're quite loud. IW2MXY, I've not worked him, so we'll just check whose frequency it is. Thank you, IW2MXY CQ. So I'm going to call him now, IX2MXY, my call sign going out, and we'll see if he comes back. Yes, he's come back to me. 5915, just check that the 59 corresponds to the 15 that N1MM has added in. I'm just transmitting my sequence to him, and he's come back saying TU, thank you, so we can go move on. IW9FDD, he's calling CQ, so I'll call him. Loads of Italians on this afternoon. It's about the right time for the skip to Italy to be pretty strong. So that looks like me. G3 question mark, yes, there we are. So just check the CQ zone, 15 is correct. We're sending the response to him, and we'll just wait for him to confirm that. He comes back saying QSL, that's fine, so we move on to the next one. See who this is and see if they're calling CQ. Bit of an interchange going on there. 59915 IZ1PK. I think this may be, let's see who calls CQ as a result of this. I'll talk on Wednesday about the actual protocol of the order in which call signs come out. Different people use different things. I've got a particular way in which I do it, so right, so IZ1PKV, so actually I've already worked him, it's come up in grey, so there's no point in dwelling on there. We'll go on to the next one. R2UZ, Russian station there. OK1KSL, so we'll call OK1KSL, it's his frequency, he says test at the end. You see it's quite rapid that you need to have spotted who they are and get in there and send your call sign. My call sign coming back, 5915. Actually he's got my call sign slightly wrong, I'm going to repeat my call sign before doing the exchange. He's just got G3ZN, he's not got the U on the end of it. Let's see if he's managed to get that. G3ZNU, okay, yeah, he's got me, okay, thank you. So that's fine, we can move on to the next one. Sometimes you just got to wait and see if the station comes back in like they are there. You sort of hope then it's their frequency and not somebody else's frequency. VE2PI, so that's a Canadian station coming in, but I don't know if that's his frequency or that's the European station. I think it probably is, yes it is. F4AIF, so I can call F4AIF. French station, not so exotic, but it is a multiplier by the look of it on 20 metres. I haven't worked France yet. Please again, he says, please again. So I'll send my call sign again. See if he can get me this time. Yep, my call sign G3ZNU59914. And I send my response back to him. 5914, there we go. And let's just get a confirm from him that he's got me okay. G3ZNU to you, thank you. So there we are, that's the sort of speed at which you try and work stations one after the other when you're tuning. If you've got your own frequency, then you sit there rapidly trying to capture the call sign by clicking on it in here and then going back to them immediately. So it can be quite fast and frenetic. So I hope that gives you an idea, and we'll do some live demos of that at the club meeting.